you for having me. I'm super pumped to be here.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. I hope it's sincere. Um, I saw I saw one of your TikTok videos recently that I think that you had a similar, like an interview about it, and you seem to be genuinely excited by just being able to talk about this thing that you created that you love. How, first of all, I just want to kind of get a grasp on like how you're feeling about all of this. You know, you went out and created this. We're going to get to the story of creating this, but I'm curious, like, what's going on in your day to day now? Like, what does it feel like to tell an emotional story like this, have it done, and have it be so well received? I see the stitches and the duets on TikTok, and I see you growing there. It's got to feel good, but I want to hear your experience.
Yeah, it's definitely been ever since I released it, just a very emotional journey. I mean, I guess from the start, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because a little bit of background about the film, it's all about me discovering who my dad was,
Hmm.
20 years after he passed away. And I did this through the surfboards that he shaped and left behind to his close friends and family. And so, yeah, I didn't know much about my dad, and when I started this journey, I was like, I didn't know what I would discover, and actually say that in the film. But for it to be so well received by so many people, um, it's just a blessing. And yeah, like you said, there's been just so many authentic, thoughtful reactions to it, and conversations started because of it. So I'm just really grateful.
Yeah, man, you should be, but you should also be really proud because it's a hell of a film. And I watched it, and I, like many of the people I imagine, I mean, I was extremely moved. I lost my dad in 2007, and I did know my dad, and I have a different version of that story. But dude, it hits on all of that. And the folks listening who are regulars to the show understand that storytelling is all about empathy, right? Understanding what someone else is going through, and why I think. I mean, it's not why I think, it's pretty matter of fact. The reason it is resonating with people is because, one, they either empathize because they have, like me, experienced a similar loss, or maybe didn't know their parent either, or two, they know and love their parent, and it makes them think about when that moment comes. And so you're touching on
Mhm.
such a primitive, like psychological experience for people that we've always struggled to navigate, right? And so this is something that everybody can relate to, regardless of if they're in the surfing community or not, right? Regardless of if
Mhm.
any of the surface level aspects of the story resonate with them, right? It's the emotional journey, and man, it was profound. It's also a really big task. I'm a filmmaker as well,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
documentary filmmaker, and I know what it takes to go on that journey, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And even complete that journey. And
Yes.
so right. So I'm really curious. Like, there was a point when you were like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Like, walk me through that decision, because I mean, it was several decisions, I imagine, but at one point it was like, nah, that hunch I had, like that thought I was dreaming about the other night, I'm actually going to do it. Maybe you told people that and, made it a real thing, but what
Yeah,
ultimately made you commit?
that's a great question. Yeah, I think what ultimately led me to commit, I was at a time in my life where I was starting to develop like a passion for like documentary filmmaking, and I'm like, what are the stories I have access to right now? You know what I mean? And so after some like for a year or so, quick backstory, I got married and moved to Florida, and then I started surfing again. And then it was about that time where like thoughts of my dad started to come back and resurface. And I'm like, what are these thoughts? Like I was 7 years old when this happened. And so it was just really strange how grief works like that. But anyway, so yeah, I was just like, I have these boards. A lot of we can get into this later, but a lot of what I try to look at as far as like a documentary film goes is like a physical journey and a metaphysical journey.
Hmm.
So the physical journey was I had these boards to then use as a device to get back to these people that my dad knew. And so that was like one really cool thing I had. And then obviously the metaphysical journey being, my own emotional journey into learning who my dad was. And so, like, with the help of like a mentor and stuff, like the encouragement of a mentor, he's like, yeah, you got to make this film. And so that's ultimately what led to my decision. So
I think that's pretty I think that's pretty profound. You're gonna go places, Troy.
thank you.
That's a beautiful way to view it, man. It honestly is. And you're also kind of starting. I like how you still, from a filmmaker's perspective, kind of started with like the Robert Rodriguez, like, what do I have access to? Like, what stories do I
Yeah.
have right here? But that approach to, is there a compelling physical journey and metaphysical journey? I
Hmm.
haven't heard it put in those words like that. I
Yes.
totally get what you mean, and that's really profound, man. That's gonna sit with me for a while. I think that's
Mm.
really smart, but also like such a good approach. And you bring the audience along the ride of both, essentially, but it's the metaphysical one that's the real story, at least as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. Just, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I can't take too much credit for it because I've learned a lot of almost everything I know from this guy named Mark Bone and his creative partner. They started this thing called Art of Documentary.
Right. Yeah.
It's a great community. I know you've seen me posting about it quite a few
Totally.
times. But yeah, once like I started consuming Mark's content and stuff, when
Mhm.
I heard that specific thing, it literally changed the entire way I think about just story structure and what I look for in films now.
Mhm.
Because if it's missing one of the two, you'll always, you ever get to the end of a film and you're like, yeah, it was good, I think, but there's just something missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ultimately comes down to one of those two things was probably missing in the film, but yeah. Anyways.
Well, I mean, there's a lot I have to ask now. So
Hmm.
yes, I know that feeling, and it's because you weren't moved emotionally, right? Like something wasn't changed inside of you. It's funny, right before or an hour or two ago, I can't say too much, but I'm working on a startup right now
Cool.
that is in the. I want to talk to you outside of this about it
Cool.
because it aligns with what you do and what you've done with this film in a variety of ways, but it's in
Mm,
the storytelling and space, and specifically in video. And so we're interviewing people for chief product officer.
cool.
And the first question he had for me today was like, what makes a film a great film? And my
Mm,
knee jerk response was, well, it's one that moves you emotionally. Like, sure, if
yeah.
the special effects like in Avatar are like amazing and groundbreaking, or if the cinematography is so great, yes, of course, all those things. But I think that the first thing is that it has moved you, shifted something inside of you emotionally. And I think that plays to the point that you just said.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that I will go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go
Yeah.
ahead.
I think a lot of it is like the obstacles. If those
Mhm.
obstacles the character is facing, if that can relate to an audience.
Totally.
Um, yeah, and it just hits on
And
a lot of
can
what you said.
and can the death of a parent be related to by people? Yeah, all of them.
Totally.
Everyone in the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. So even though you kind of like fell on the sword for us on that one, it was a good choice because, man, we all know that, or will know that, or think about that, right? That's, you're not even really alienating anyone.
Yeah.
Real quick about Mark, because we talk a lot on the show. In fact, past two episodes, but the two episodes ago, so that or episode 124 was with Stephen Pressfield, and the title of that one was "The Life Changing Power of Mentors." We talk a lot about mentors. So I think it's important. I
Mm,
don't want to like skirt past that, and I have questions to ask you about the art of documentary, because I know that's been helpful. Like, they put it out on their YouTube channel,
yep.
and that's probably helped it get a lot of the views that it did. That partnership is important. But let's talk about
Hmm.
that mentor specifically, briefly. Like, how did that come about? How did that mentorship and that connection come about?
Yeah, I think I kind of pride myself on it because I discovered Mark's
Good for
channel,
you.
or I guess the YouTube algorithm helped me discover it, when he was at like really low subscriber count, probably like 10,000 or less. Now he's at
Mhm.
like 200,000 plus.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. So I just started watching all of his videos. Later, found out that he has an academy or whatever. Joined that. And and then from there, obviously, I consumed all the content, learned a lot, and then was able to apply it to the film. But then I was like, I need some one-on-one help with this because so essentially what happened was I got it to a rough cut position.
Mhm.
And then I booked a call, like a one-on-one call with Mark. I showed it to him, and he just really, really enjoyed it. Um, and then ultimately, he actually came on as an executive producer of the film, helped me like fund it towards the end, like post production, and then also just kind of provide like story consulting,
Mhm.
and yeah, mentorship, if you will. And yeah, it was just like the best thing I could have done. I think a lot of people, they'll get towards the end of the film and then they'll want to release it so fast that they just put it out, which is fine. You hear like, um, a finished film's better than not a finished film. So
Correct.
kudos to whoever can do like finish anything. But I think filmmakers should, you know, take that a step far further to be like, okay, I got a rough cut that I could be happy posting with, but really take a second to get feedback from people who are much more experienced and better than you. And you have to, when you do this, you have to be okay with it. Like, okay, for example, I showed Mark the rough cut in I think April, and then my film, like I was ready to post the film in May.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I'll get a few notes and then I'll make them. And but then a lot of things happened, and then ultimately I ended up releasing it in like I think it was October, September,
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
So you just really, when you're making film, you have to commit fully to the process. I
And
say all that to say,
that 6 months doesn't matter, except that
mm-mm.
it does in the positive light, right? Like,
Yes,
it doesn't matter in terms of what you were thinking. It was like, "I just wanna get it out there." Like, it's a blip, right? And 6 months,
yep,
people will still be there, but also it was probably better because I mean, I'm just spitballing. I don't even know the
mm-hmm,
backstory here, but, like, you could have kept iterating or making it better. You could have done your marketing during that point. I mean, there's a reason why Hollywood films are created, and then there's like a year of the marketing campaign, right? So,
mm-hmm,
I had a very
exactly,
similar journey on my first feature doc,
mm,
where I've talked about this before too. When you build in public, so I had done a crowdfunding campaign to start the project. So I had people all over the world, because it was kind of a global doc, that were like, I say hounding me. I felt hounded. They weren't hounding me, but like, yeah, I felt the pressure from them, right? Like, where is this? They didn't understand what I was building, and this is something that takes years.
mm-hmm,
They were expecting it like in 3 months, and I kept trying to make it better and better, like what you're talking about. And I had a mentor. He was a writer for Vanity Fair and Men's Health, like legit, like was professional. And I felt
mm-hmm,
like I owed them to get it out and bring it out. And he was like, "Look, Rain," he was like, "it doesn't matter if it comes out this year. It could be 2 years from now," which to me at that
yes.
time was like absurd, right? And he's like, "And it doesn't matter, because the point is to get it right and to do it right. And also, if they're fans of it, like, they'll be there. They will still be there to
Exactly.
watch it. They might be grumbling now, wanting to see it, but if they want to see it, they'll watch it in 2 years." He was
Mhm.
100% right. We eventually like licensed the film. It had a happy ending and all of that. But I had to learn that from a mentor as well. It's such a good point that you brought up. I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I think we put a lot of unneeded pressure on ourselves to just get something out there. It's okay, like, especially for your first few, like, just get them out.
Yeah,
But once you reach a certain point and if you stumble across a story that you're like, "Okay, this is something special,"
get it right.
just yeah, be patient, get it right, and, commit for the long haul. Don't rush anything out and do as much as you can to make it better.
I think back to Mark.
Mhm,
Those relationships and mentors, especially, are key. I mean, into whatever you're trying to build, whether it's a film or anything. If you're trying to go off on a project like this solo, like, relationships are key. I also commend you for like being pushy and getting in there. Like, there's a lot to say about that as well.
mm,
Using what you have, YouTube, Instagram, social media, etc., and linking up with people,
mhm,
because you're gonna need them.
yeah.
What did it take you to actually execute this? I mean, were you able to raise any money? Was it your own? Like, let's talk about logistics. If someone, yeah, like how did you do this?
Yeah. So I guess there wasn't really a budget. I kind of just saved up a few $1,000 for travel expenses
Hmm.
because like so I found Mark late in the process. So in
Sure.
my mind, I was just like, it'll just be a self-funded doc.
Hmm.
I'll do as much as I can for as much as I have, type of thing. So that was really more just like I guess first was gathering the team. Um, you know, just find some friends that are passionate, that share a passion with you about filmmaking, friends you can trust, and that's what I did. So I teamed up with two of my buddies. We, drove from Florida to North Carolina, and then yeah, we filmed over a span of I think it was either 4 or 5 days in North Carolina, and then I went with one of my buddies, one of the same guys, also to California a few months later. That's the thing about making a short; you have unlimited time. It's not a client project, so like
Totally.
you can space things out if you need to. It's really flexible. Um, so yeah, I just did the best with what I had. Um, and so that was really what started it. It wasn't like, you know, I I go back and forth when I say this. But like especially for your first few projects, I see a lot of filmmakers spending a lot of time on like worrying about how to raise money.
Yeah.
And I get it if you don't have like literally any money, you know what I mean? It depends on your situation. Thankfully for me, I have a wife. We have dual income, no kids, so
Woo!
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have many expenses. And so yeah, that's really ultimately how I got started.
And just a word to the wise: don't rush that second step. If it's in the cards for you and your wife, if you're interested in that, there's no rush on the kids, my friend.
Yeah,
That does
exactly. We're
change
we're getting
things
there.
drastically.
Yeah.
Take your
We're
time,
starting
baby.
to think
Take your
about that.
yeah. Just think.
Um,
Just think. Just think.
but anyways, I'm back on that one point. I see a lot of filmmakers just stressing about the things they can't control.
Totally.
Um, like I don't have this gear. I don't have access to 10 grand. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So make the story you can with the resources you have. And then if it's good enough, you never know, what could happen. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes us back to the point of like kind of sticking it out, make those relationships along the way,
hmm
because it can evolve. Like the storytelling, the documentary filmmaking process, your journey of making the film evolves as well.
hmm
And things happen, and they don't happen when you're sitting there waiting to get started, right?
exactly.
All of the same, the film I was talking about, all of the little spikes of momentum or whatever that helped get us up that hill, yeah, they happened deep into the process, like not on day one, right? It was day
hmm
100 and then day 420 and then I didn't mean to say 420 specifically, but whatever,
Yeah.
day 500. Then, so you have to get going and then things like that can happen, right? It's just, but you
Exactly.
really do have to start the work. Let me ask you this.
Mhm.
And I love that we're still sticking around like someone who wants to do something like this, like a beginner. And we talked about it before we started recording about
Mhm.
the things that hold people back. If you if you could go back and do it now, like what things logistically speaking would you do to execute? Like what would you do differently, if anything?
Oh, man. I think the more things I look back at that I would have done better I mean, in general, it's more related to story, but,
Mhm. Okay.
like, logistically oh, okay, I can say this, so when you're planning a shoot that spans across multiple days with multiple interviews and stuff, um, to be honest, I got kinda lucky that during that time in North Carolina, that entire week, it was such a blessing, but, that entire week, the lighting was just, like, perfect outside. Like, it was very overcast, very soft lighting, and you'll see
Mhm.
that throughout the film. But that was honestly kinda by accident because there was some times where I'm like, "Yeah, we definitely should be getting some harsh light right now."
Mhm.
So, like, going into my next one, it's just making sure, like, schedule-wise, I think we talk about it in Art of Documentary, just called, uh, uh dang, I just blanked. It's just the scheduling
Schedule.
essentially where you shoot B-roll in the morning. I
Yeah.
think it's pancake scheduling. B-roll in the morning, interview in the late afternoon, and then more B-roll towards sunset. I would definitely stick to that strictly, but yeah.
This is a personal question, or well, not personal question, but personal, like, meaning for me.
Hmm.
The when you kind of introduced a new character with a surfboard, was that one that your dad had made for that person, or did you just choose to kind of identify each family member with a surfboard?
Yeah, it was so all the surfboards that are in the film that people have, those are their boards. Whether my dad made it for them or not, they attained it somehow.
Yeah, okay.
And so they have it as their own memory of my dad. So
Yeah, very.
I didn't necessarily stage anything in the sense of like bringing a board to someone. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a cool little motif, man. I really dug that. The one shot that got me was when it was, I think at your sister's house when the
Mm.
board was on the wall, like above the kind of
Hmm.
transition to the kitchen or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like he's looking over, and I was like, it just,
Yeah,
I mean, beautifully
that wre
brutal.
that wrecked me when I actually saw it as you see in the film,
So,
like
so did you shot it and then saw it in post or realized it, or did you?
no, so that happened in the moment, and that's
Okay,
where I don't wanna ruin the film for someone, but,
it's okay.
it's ultimately what we use at the end to kinda it was my realization in that moment that he is still alive, you know what I mean? When I stepped back and got that shot of my sister and stuff, yeah,
It's those little things, man. If you don't start digging like you did, you don't notice it. And I love that part where you're like, it started, and I don't think this will spoil it. I think this will make people want to see it even more.
true.
And real quick, tell them what the name of it is,
Yep.
and where they can find it.
Yeah, the name of the film is One Lost Many Found, and you can find it we actually got a partnership with Film Supply, which is really cool. If you're not a filmmaker, you may not know Film Supply, but it's our main place I push people is on YouTube. If you just type in One Lost Many Found,
Yeah,
it's on my executive producer's, YouTube channel there, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I love that part where you were like, it's almost like now he was coming to find me, like when these kind of organic serendipitous things started happening. But yeah,
mhm,
that shot was something else. And when you
thank you.
I'm a firm believer though that when you tune into it, you see those things, right? And it's like then you
Mhm,
start to really dive into it, and we'll get, we can hippie out real quick and get real woo woo. But it's like now you get into the part of like everything is energy, and like that energy is
mm,
out there, but yeah, I think you have to be open to it. Anyway, it was just a beautiful moment, but also a beautiful moment captured in the shot, and it totally conveyed, like, I mean, the position, the framing, all of that. It was gorgeous. So let's stay here in this place that we're on the verge of of getting emotional.
yeah.
And right now let's drag it down deeper, Troy.
It's okay,
So
that's been my last year anyway, so
buddy, I can imagine, but I mean, it's cathartic. I mean, you sought this journey out for a reason, and I hope that it is accomplishing your goal that you set out to. I feel like
Mhm,
that it must be, but that is your journey, my friend. What did you not anticipate happening to you in this journey
hmm.
that has happened?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I started the film, I didn't realize how much I actually missed my dad, you know what I mean? And so that was really unexpected. There's just a few moments that even there's a few moments off camera that we didn't get of me just, like, breaking down because that was just, like it was very unexpected, some of the things and emotions that were arising as I listened to people while during interviews or like I like you'll see in the film, saw certain shots, I don't know. Um, and, yeah, I think just the yeah, I think that'd be the one biggest thing I didn't expect is just the emotional toll it'd take. I'd be like I just thought, yeah, it's gonna be me just discovering who my dad was, through his friends, it'll be, like, a nice thing, but I didn't realize ultimately, like, how it actually make me feel, you know?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Um, a while back and on the show, I've already mentioned this episode with Stephen Pressfield. We talked about, or his latest book talks about, um, how we as artists endure pain
Mm,
through the art, right? And for some people, that's getting full sleeves and tattooing your body. For some people, and these are his words, I'm paraphrasing, we
hmm
blast our pecs, right? Like the bodybuilder, like all these expressions of ourselves or images of ourselves that we create are in some way navigating and enduring that pain.
Yeah.
So this has been kind of haunting me, this concept, because I was like, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, that's like very true, because I have also created projects that, you know, I
hmm
can see now, like looking at it objectively, like, oh, that's probably what I was trying to do there. Do you
Yeah.
think that's like true? I know this is a very vague question. I just kind of want to like
No.
throw it out there and see. Okay, you seem like you see where I'm
Yeah, it's
going.
definitely not vague.
Okay,
I think, it's extremely true. I mean, before, like, I never consider myself, like, a true artist, and I think a lot of filmmakers wouldn't, you know what I
I
mean?
agree. I totally agree. I like cringe when I hear the word, but I totally understand.
Yeah, but now after making this, I actually kind of like, I don't mind calling myself an artist in
You
a weird
are.
way.
You are.
Because, like, ultimately, art is just, full expression of yourself, to get someone
Exactly.
to feel a certain way. And then when I made this film, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I totally get how people say this, even though it can come across cheesy sometimes." Like, because the whole filmmaking process for me is super cathartic, and especially if I'm trying to express something that I have a strong opinion on, or just, like a personal journey like this film was.
Mhm.
So yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that one. It
And
totally
and
is.
and I think our definition of art needs to change, right? Because I mean, cooking is an art, bodybuilding is an art, building a car is an art, right?
Mhm.
Landscaping, I'm looking outside of my backyard is an art. Like all of these things are ways that we express ourselves to, yes, maybe move other people, but also to for ourselves, right? To change how we feel or influence the way we feel about ourselves. And it wasn't until I read that passage, I'll send it to you so you can kind of like, because it was, I think, a kind of a whole chapter dedicated to that concept.
Mhm.
And it's funny that you said that, man. I totally have struggled with that word artist
Yeah.
my whole life, but it's because we have the wrong definition of it, right? Like we all have some art that we are expressing ourselves through, and there's a reason why, and you 100% are. Um, I've been very into is like such a lame expression. I've been very focused on, I've been
Yeah.
very intrigued by, um, lately the capturing and sharing of one's life stories, right? And I do
Mm.
this for a living. I have a client that's a cancer foundation, a rare cancer
Mm.
foundation. I do a lot of patient-centric stories, just 10-minute little documentaries about a day in the life of or not day in the life, but a how these patients emotionally, psychologically navigate this rare disease, specifically this rare disease, because that gives them other challenges than just cancer, right?
Right.
So it's been really interesting and very powerful. And I've also done some for people that are like kind of like legacy videos, like of their lives, like a documentary of their
Mhm.
lives. You're doing the same thing, just kind of retrospectively.
Mhm.
Um, so it made me think a lot about that. So the question is, why? Well, I guess the first question would be, do you think it's important? And if so, if I can assume that you do, like, why? Or no, I won't say why is it important. What can we learn as
Mm.
people, as sons, as children, as colleagues, peers, as fellow humans from the sharing of others' life stories? So you're telling kind of your dad's life story, but you're also telling one of your life stories. Like both of those are
Mm.
probably resonating with people.
Yeah.
What, from real life, authentic stories.
Mm. Yeah, I think, that's one thing I didn't expect. So I think you found me from TikTok, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, like, I started to just promote my film there, not necessarily in a very salesy marketing way, just sharing my family story and these really short form snippets, And I think of the thing I've learned the most is just like your story, whether you think it's good or not, quote unquote, could bring healing to someone else. Even if you don't necessarily, think like I said, again, it's has certain qualities that you might think it's someone that might think it's weird or something, but the same person who thinks it's weird, there could be 10 other ones who really, really need to hear the things you've gone through. So I think that's the biggest thing. One of the biggest takeaways I've learned, especially from just sharing my story on like social. Yeah, it's really powerful.
It's 100% true, and I love that you landed there. I mean, for those not watching or listening, my shirt says "Your Story Matters," and this is like the oldest one of these that I made and got. But that's like one of the principles that my business is built and founded upon.
Hmm.
You're 100% right, man. Like, and I love that you keep coming back to these little like kind of like limiting beliefs that we have. Like, oh, like
Mm,
I deal with them all the time. People are like, oh, who cares about my story? Somebody out
yeah.
there does, right? And we do that shit to ourselves so often. We're just like, I haven't really had a life like that's much to brag about or that would inspire anybody. It's like you don't know what people are going through, and
Hmm.
everybody's story has power to it, 100%. And I fully believe that that sharing those are important for people. And I love that you
Hmm.
said that. It's like you don't know who out there might need to hear it. Yours is resonating with a lot of people. I did find it on TikTok, and I have to say, I think that was very wise to use that platform. And you said a very
Mm,
key thing, not in a salesy way. It wasn't like, "Hey guys,
mm,
just dropped my new film. Go watch it on YouTube." Films apply. Like you
yeah.
just would put scenes out there.
Mhm,
Um, that someone might relate to, and they do.
mhm.
That's a perfect way, and you are effectively marketing it that way. This goes
Thank you.
back to how what we do on the show, helping people with brand storytelling is like stop
Mm,
hitting people over the head with sales and just tell
mhm,
stories about the problems you solve or what you do or the people you serve or whatever. That's what
mhm.
people care about, and it will do the rest. I think that's like
Exactly.
yeah, you don't hit them over the people are tired of that, right? But you've got something real that touches on, a lot of people's journeys and their hearts, and you
Mhm.
don't have to do that. And because of that, it's actually working. People are wanting to go see the documentary. That's exactly what happened to me. That's why I reached out to you for this. I was like, "Oh, I want to," because I knew that, or I assumed that this was probably like an early, project in your career. I knew it
Mhm,
would be helpful for people, and I knew that you had a journey and a story worth telling just by making this, right? And it kind of like touches a lot of the points that we talk about on the show. I'm really glad that you were able to spend some time with us. Is there any
yeah.
just to stay on the social media kind of like marketing aspect of it, is there
Mhm.
any strategy that you implement for that?
Mm.
Like how do you approach that?
I can speak mainly from just, like, a filmmaker's perspective. If you
Yeah.
have a film, you just have to pick something about your film that you feel like can speak to a broader audience that may create some kind of emotion. Does that make sense? Whether that's wow, like, that's really funny, or it's like what the hell type of
Yeah,
emotion,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
or it's like an
Confusion.
emotion, or it's like an emotional emotion, like kind of what I went for in my TikTok videos. It needs to create like one of those three emotions in someone, or else people are just gonna. So yeah, some of the clips that I shared that went viral, or more of the more emotional ones that like showed someone crying right away. Um, and you have to find that balance as a marketer too. Like there come a point where I didn't wanna, like, exploit my characters, like, too much because there are some, like, really deep stuff in some of those interviews. So I would be cautious, like, what you share, but yeah, anyways, I guess that was my strategy is to share some of the more really authentic stories that went kind of untold in the film,
Yeah.
and doing that in a way it could be easily consumed within, like, 10 seconds or less, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did anybody advise you on that, or you just kinda had a hunch and a feeling?
I kinda I had a hunch. I knew my film could speak to a broader audience. Because I do a lot of like consuming of like just marketing content in general. I'm
Okay,
kind of like
gotcha.
I really enjoy marketing and stuff. Um, so yeah, it was more just like deploying on the things I've been learning about for the past few years, really.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Do you think that, well, not do you think, did you
Hmm.
accomplish your goal? You set out with a purpose, with an intention, with an objective to while making this film. Do you feel like you accomplished that goal?
Yeah, I think I've exceeded it, to be honest. Like I have a I'm getting better at this as I mature as a creative and like now business owner and stuff. But sometimes I just put these like limiting beliefs on myself. So like for the film, for example, I was just like, it'd be great to just get into one festival. It was like earlier in my career, even now, it's hard for me to sometimes set these like goals that are kind of crazy because I get kind of, I don't know, I don't want to disappoint myself. But I quickly found that that's um, not the best way to live or approach your creative projects.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just don't limit yourself to what if you have conviction about the message in the film, um, and it's the quality's there, the story's there, and in my case, if the timing's right, then if all those things combine, it could really, change your career or change, yeah, I guess your career or business or whatever you're trying to do. Um, yeah, so it's definitely exceeded way further than I expected. But ultimately, I think it was because I really, I really stressed making the best film possible. If I don't know how much of your, audience is like YouTube listeners, like I
Lots
kind
of
of
them, yeah, lots of 'em.
yeah, I watch a lot of like these people called Colin and Samir and just people that talk about, marketing in general. But one thing I did hear that Mr. Beast said, I know he's like a questionable like he has a lot of controversy around him as far as like is he an actual filmmaker or whatever. But one thing
He's
I
a
really
storyteller.
exactly. One thing I really love what he says is just people need to make the best video possible. And it sounds so simple, but going back to what we said earlier, people just shorten that process just to get something done. But if you're truly committed to making like the best film you can, it can really, you know, pay dividends. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, he had a clip that I had used where he was like, "I don't study the algorithms." He was like, "Just I would." He was like, "If I was starting out, I would study like Pixar and these great
hmm,
stories and great films to understand what resonates with people emotionally."
yep.
So yeah, he gets it. No, we're fans of Mr. Beast around here. So speaking of goals,
Yeah.
now that your approach to goals has shifted and you have these big lofty goals, right, and high
I'm getting there. I'm
ambitions,
getting there.
what's next? What are you focused on? What are you excited about coming up? You're building up momentum, which is awesome. Now
Hmm.
you've got eyes and ears watching. What's coming up
Yeah,
next,
I
babe?
kind of that's kind of one thing I've been trying to process because it's also like I put that unneeded pressure on myself. Like I almost wish well, I just want to like make a film like right now and put it out, and then just to get past that. Like even though I don't have a big crazy audience or anything like that, but it's still more than I had previously. So
Right, I get it.
I
Yeah.
just feel that pressure a little. But yeah, the next thing is really, you know, this probably like 5 months ago, I like left my full-time job to pursue my own video production company. And like releasing the film hasn't led to any like direct video work. I never expected it to.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Let's keep it real for the folks out there. It's like
yeah, like it won't. Like
right.
if you're betting on that, it's not gonna
You've got
happen.
some attention and some great, response, but yeah, you make $1,000,000 off of it.
Yeah, like I consider that more my personal brand.
Yeah.
Like doing stuff like this is, you know what
Which
I mean?
which eventually, like we said about the making the film process, it will compound as you go on. Like you've
Exactly.
started that process. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, quit my job. So right now I'm just working on like trying to scale my video production company, learning everything about just sales, marketing. like mainly sales, to try how to package video and um, that kind of thing. And then like I know that's my main goal. So my business goals are that's like
That's a
one of the
big
main
task,
things.
man.
Yeah,
That's a big deal.
yeah, it's just one of the main things I'm focusing on this year. And then this year, I think last year I was kind of going into the year, I was like, I want to make 4 shorts. I ended up making one, but so
Right, dude.
I had just like, a different viewpoint. But this year I'm like, I just want to make one more short, and just make it really good again.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the goal for this year, just to complete one more film, just keep making, the
Yep.
films I'm passionate about and see what happens, I guess.
Well, I'm excited to see him, man. Before we go, I just want to say you had mentioned in the beginning about not knowing, like you started missing your dad and not
Mm,
really realizing that. And I just want to touch on that point before we go. Like,
mhm,
it's strange how that happens, right? Like you just get caught up in the day to day, and grief works very mysteriously, or in a weird way, where it's just kind of under the surface, and yeah, you don't really realize it because you're executing the task you need to do to make it through to the next day. But
mhm,
yeah, there's a gap there, regardless of if you acknowledge it or not. There's a hole somewhere, and so I think it was really important for you to explore that. And it
mhm,
is funny. You also mentioned just kind of like you started surfing more and started conjuring it up a little bit. Like you started kind of inadvertently reconnecting with him. And that
mhm,
it happens when you get older. Like you start picking up mannerisms, that were your dad's or your parents that you didn't know, right? And
totally.
it's been a long time. My dad's been passed away for a long time, but still, like these things make their way through. There's this undeniable connection
Mhm,
that won't be severed, right? It might be suppressed a little bit.
yep,
And I just think that this was such a powerful way to dig into that and pursue it a little bit. And I hope, that it helped you heal a little bit, because it's a lifelong process,
mhm,
grief is. And so it was
totally.
extremely touching for me, and many other people out there. And I'm really proud of you for doing it, for having the success with it. But not so much that, but yes to that, obviously, but like really for
Mhm,
the inner journey of doing it, because I've been there. I'm there now in another situation, and it's tough. It's very, very
mhm,
tough. So I'm really
yeah.
proud of you for like, that's a significant leap, man. And I hope that it helped you heal some of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like what you said there. A key word that stuck out was just acknowledge. And I think
Mhm.
w in terms of grief, if I had advice to someone going through something, it's just you have to acknowledge it and like just face it head on.
Mhm.
Because like you said, it's gonna come and go, but as long as you don't try to bury it for many years like I did, like it's gonna surface at some point. You'd rather manage it than have to come to this big realization or regret later on, you know?
Mhm. It'll smack you in the face whether you like it or not.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Troy, my friend, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on the show. It was genuinely a pleasure, and the film is incredible. Like it's incredible. It really is. Like the
Thank you.
story, like what we talked about today, but also the cinematography was great. The North Carolina beaches at sunset help. I will give
Oh,
you
yeah,
that.
totally.
Also, it was really like the dusk scenes with your mom. I think out there,
Mhm.
like that's not easy to pull off. It looked really good
Mm.
on this side of the lens. So beautiful
Thank you.
film for everyone out there. Go check it out. Also, even though I know you had the surfboard at the beginning, when it landed on
Mhm.
it at the end with the title, like that was really good. That got me. That got me good.
Thank you. No,
Yeah, man.
actually, I was watching the film this morning just because I haven't fully watched it in a bit,
Yeah,
and just to kinda prep for this, so I was, like, sharp. But, yeah, I was getting emotional at the end. It always you made something you're proud of when, like, even a year later, it still
totally.
gives you chills or whatever,
Yep,
so,
that's a good when
yeah.
started showing the signatures and the notes written to him. I was a mess,
Yeah.
bro. I was a
Yeah, I got
mess.
it right here too. I
Oh
put it in the
shit!
bag.
Oh my god, good for you. I'm glad you called that out.
I
Uh,
put it in the bag for
it,
this.
it was a beautiful story, man, and it was beautifully done.
Thank you.
Mad props. Big respect. You should be very proud of yourself. And I look
Thank
forward
you so
to
much.
staying connected with you, man, seeing what you do next.
Absolutely, yeah. I was binging your content, and it's all stuff I'm like, heck yes,
I know, I know.
this
I've
guy's
realized
great.
just through the
So
conversation, I really just go off of vibes, man. And so, like, I knew you'd have an interesting story to tell that would help the people who I help. But
hmm
I picked up on that vibe, and it really was it's been echoed tremendously by this conversation. I think there's a lot of alignment. I'm happy. I really would like to keep the connection going. If there's anything I can ever do to help, I pledge it to you now.
I
But
love it
hey, we've made the connection, so it's on us from here.
for sure.